pedestrians and cyclists in Lower Manhattan. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. This is Aljazzera, live from Doha. Also coming up, a Catalan minister returns home from Belgium to chance a traitor by protesters. We hear more about plans by Papua New Guinea's army to enter an Australian-run prison camp. And the fight against hepatitis. Doctors gather to eliminate the disease that kills 1.3 million people every year. US President Donald Trump is vowing to step up so-called extreme vetting of foreigners after a truck was driven into cyclists and pedestrians in New York City. 8 people were killed, 5 of them from Argentina. The 29-year-old suspect was shot at the scene in Lower Manhattan and taken to hospital. Gabriel Elizondo has the latest.
A frightening sight of mangled bicycles after a deadly truck attack just blocks from the September 11th memorial. Police say a man deliberately drove this rental truck into a bike path, mowing down cyclists and pedestrians, causing multiple deaths and injuries.
Everyone started running, then we started running too.
We're all anticipating like a gunshot at any minute.
According to authorities, after striking the pedestrians and cyclists, the truck traveled several blocks before crashing into a school bus with kids on board. An eyewitness filmed this video moments after the crash. He told us this is the suspect who fled the truck.
I thought it's something, maybe it might be something from the Halloween, but when I heard the gunshot, then I got really scared.
We're going down to the next corner.
Police shot the suspect, a 29-year-old male, and took him into custody. The suspect is reported to be Sayfullo Saipov from Uzbekistan. Authorities say the suspect made a statement when he got out of his truck. Those words are why officials are considering this an act of terror.
Let me be clear that based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror, and a particularly cowardly act of terror aimed at innocent civilians, aimed at people going about their lives who had no idea what was about to hit them.
The governor is calling on New Yorkers to carry on with their lives.
We felt the pain before, we feel the pain today, but we go forward together, and we go forward stronger than ever.
While it's being investigated as a potential act of terror, the governor said there are no indications of any wider plot or threat to the city. Nevertheless, the police say they'll have extra officers out in force in the coming days, just to be sure. Elizondo, Aljazzera, New York.
Catalonia's ousted interior minister has returned to Barcelona to chance a traitor by unionist protesters. Joaquim Forn and the rest of the Catalan cabinet have been fired by Spain's central government. Forn has been in Belgium with the former president Carles Puigdemont. All 14 members of the sacked Catalan cabinet are facing possible charges of rebellion. It's not clear whether Carles Puigdemont will return to Madrid for questioning in court. He says he's in Belgium to ensure his freedom and safety, and says he's still Catalonia's legitimate president. Andrew Simmons reports from Barcelona.
Carles Puigdemont is on a mission, trying to get international support while at the same time justifying why he left his homeland, after charges were filed against him by the Spanish prosecutor.
I'm not here in order to demand asylum, political asylum. This is not a Belgian question. I'm here in Brussels as a capital of Europe. This is not a matter of the question of the Belgian politics. It has no relationship. I'm here in order to act with freedom and safety.
Puigdemont says he needs guarantees if he comes back, and he wouldn't say how long he'll be away. In the organisation that's involved in all the big pro-secession demonstrations, the mood lifts a little.
Yeah, I think it only makes sense that at least part of the government can remain operative outside the country, because it would not be safe for them to stay in Spain.
Puigdemont spent a low-profile weekend apart from a call for peaceful support. Then came the heat on Monday with charges filed, and he was nowhere to be seen. When he emerged in Belgium, his supporters had a range of emotions, from outright anger to dissent. What's the mood like now? And has Puigdemont's decision to go to Brussels done damage?
Personally, I think it did, but it's something that we can only analyze with time. If he hadn't speak today, it would have been a problem for us, because you cannot do that on a Friday, then go out, like have a weekend off, and we don't know if we are a republic or we are still part of Spain, and he's missing.
Cristina Lecina has favoured secession for the past 7 years. She thinks Puigdemont is right to leave.
I thought he was in political exile, or that he wanted to internationalize the conflict. Both things seemed good to me. Initially, we were disconcerted, but now we see it clearly.
But nothing is clear over what's in store for sacked ministers who have stayed in Catalonia. Banished from their offices, they arrive for work at the dissolved parliament instead, insisting their government is still legitimate. Andrew Simmons, Aljazzera, Barcelona.
A court ruling is due on a lawsuit challenging the closure of an Australian-run offshore prison camp. Tensions running high at the facility on Papua New Guinea's Manus Island, with reports of looting by armed locals. There are reports the country's army plans to enter the facility, leading to fears it'll force the 600 refugees to move to alternative accommodation. However, there are also reports the army only intends to provide temporary security at the camp. Charlotte Bellis reports.
We need safety country. Not still torture for us here.
These refugees are desperate to stay inside a detention centre that they fought to close.
Our main concern is our safety. Maybe it's my last picture you see here. Maybe not. Who knows? Our life is in deep danger.
Refugees were sent to the Manus Island Detention Centre by Australia 4 years ago, a holding pen until a permanent solution was found and a deterrent for those who might follow. The locals of Papua New Guinea were always hostile. There was an attack in 2014 that left one refugee dead. The concept and conditions of Manus Island were widely condemned. Finally, a court deemed it illegal, and Australia agreed to close the centre and pay refugees compensation. But as the facility was decommissioned and security forces left on Tuesday, refugees reported armed looters.
The Australian authorities all pulled out of the centre, abandoning these refugees essentially, and they have serious concerns for their safety on Manus Island, whether they leave the facility or not, so that they've barricaded themselves into the centre.
It's now a siege. Water, electricity and food supplies have been cut off.
They came in and they cut the pipe, so they drawn the water. Now this tank is empty.
People inside are stockpiling as best they can. There'll be no food after today, no drinking water after today. But we are looking at a siege.
The asylum were given alternate accommodation on the island, but they said it isn't equipped to protect them from the locals.
They are not going to give us a safety guarantee, that's why I'm staying here.
This is a crazy situation. Everybody's been screaming about wanting to get out of the place. Well, we say that we're going to close it, move them into a different facility, and require those that aren't refugees to go back to their country of origin, and now they won't leave.
Australia's government says the prison closure is a matter for Papua New Guinea, and yet Papua New Guinea disputed that in a statement on Sunday, which leaves refugees caught between two governments and a hostile native population. Charlotte Bellis, Aljazzera.
Well, let's talk to Nick McKim. He's the Senator for Tasmania with the Australia Greens Party. He's on Manus Island, but has been barred from entering the prison camp. He joins us live on the phone. Senator, you've described what's happening on Manus as a humanitarian emergency. Tell us briefly what's happening to the refugees now that the camp has officially been closed.
Well, the refugees have determined that the camp is the least unsafe place for them, and they've basically barricaded themselves into the camp. They have a small amount of drinking water and food, which they've been hoarding for the last couple of weeks, and they have rigged up ad hoc channels for water to try and catch water off the roofs of the camp when it rains, and they are storing that water in the rubbish bins that they were using in the camp. But the significant concerns here are the safety of the refugees from armed looters, and about 50 armed looters broke into the camp 2 nights ago, but there are also about 20% of the refugees who've been diagnosed as clinically depressed or suffering from post-traumatic stress, and they have had access to their psychotropic medication now cut off as well, which will lead to calamitous mental health outcomes, and there are medical professionals in Australia warning today that suicides in the near future are inevitable.
Australia's Immigration Minister, Peter Dutton, has accused you of breathtaking duplicity and suggests your party is deliberately inciting trouble on Manus. I mean, what's your response to that?
Well, I've got a couple of responses to Peter Dutton. Firstly, I don't take my marching orders from a serial human rights abuser and a minister who's overseen torture camps on Manus Island and Nauru for the last few years. And secondly, I would say, in response to Mr Dutton, that if there is a tragedy here on Manus Island, and I think unless Mr Dutton urgently intervenes, that is almost inevitable, he is the one that will have blood on his hands, not me.
Senator, let me ask you, who's actually responsible for the refugees on Manus? I mean, Papua New Guinea say, hang on, it's Australia, but the Australians say it's Papua New Guinea. I mean, they're both blaming each other, so who is responsible?
Well, that's exactly right, and they are both blaming each other, and it's the poor 600 souls who are trapped in the middle with danger everywhere they turn. But the United Nations has repeatedly and at some length made it very clear that these men remain Australia's responsibility, and not just the guys on Manus Island, but the hundreds of men, women and children who are in similar conditions on Nauru, another small Pacific island. And the United Nations has made it abundantly clear on multiple occasions that under international law, these people are Australia's responsibility, and Australia urgently needs to evacuate the camp and take everybody in that prison camp to safety in Australia, who otherwise will risk a humanitarian calamity.
Let me get a final thought from you, Senator. What about the refugees who have already moved to temporary accommodation? What are conditions like for them?
Well, conditions in the temporary accommodation, they do have access to food and water, but there are 2 facilities that are currently in operation. One of them is basically a prison that is on the outskirts of the capital city of Manus Island, a town called Lorengau. The other facility is an open facility. It has no fences, and the refugees are absolutely terrified that if they move to a facility with open fences, that they will face attacks from armed locals. And remember, the Papua New Guinean Navy assaulted the refugees with shotguns and submachine guns earlier this year and tried to storm the camp in an attempt to kill refugees. So everywhere they turn, there is danger, and the refugees have made a collective decision to stay where they are.
Senator Nick McKim, thank you very much for talking to Aljazzera. Lots more still to come here. What did lawyers from Facebook, Twitter and Google tell Congress about alleged Russian